into IT for quite some time now. Currently, what I do, I'm into cloud computing engineering, as well as Microsoft 365, which is also a form of cloud computing. Okay. So what we're going to do today is we'll just introduce the concepts of cloud computing and other things that you really need to know within the entire concept. Okay. So I hope and I believe that after this class, for as many who think the cloud is the cloud in the sky, you will have a proper understanding of why it is called the cloud. Okay. Alrighty, so without much ado, I'll just go ahead and share my screen because I know we have limited time and we also have to provide some time for questions as well. Alrighty, and let me just go ahead and share my screen. If you have questions, feel free, just in case you have questions while I'm speaking, feel free to raise your hand. And as soon as I have the time to, pick up your question, I will definitely call upon you. Okay. So if you can see my screen, just let me know.
Okay. Send. Yes, can see
Thank
your screen.
you. Thank you so very much. Let me just minimize this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. What is cloud computing? Cloud computing actually have a lot of definitions out there, but because we are learning from Microsoft's perspective, we are going to learn the Microsoft's definition of cloud computing. So perhaps you've heard about cloud computing, you have surfed the internet and you have gotten some, definitions out there. This is not different from what you already know. Okay, it's just the way Microsoft puts it in a very simple way so you can understand. More so, I love teaching with analogies. So during the course of this class, I may just chip in one or two scenarios to make you understand better. Okay. So what is cloud computing? Cloud computing is the delivery of computing services over the internet, enabling faster innovation, flexible resources, and economies of scale. Okay. An example of the computing service that is written here, you can see one here, and this stands for compute. Compute can be a client system, compute can be a server system, or anything that hosts applications. For example, we have web apps, AKS, and all of that. We'll be talking about them briefly as we progress in the class. But part of the major categories of computing services, we have the compute, we have networking. For as many of us who knows the traditional, networking, whenever you hear the word networking, the first thing that comes into some people's mind, most especially people in the sales background, is meeting out or reaching out to people and connecting with them, probably to sell one or two things. And people who are coming from IT, when they hear networking, routers, switches, LAN cables, and etc. Right? So we're not far from that. We're not far from the traditional IT perspective of networking, because that is what it is. Okay. So the next computing service is storage. For as many who said they wanted to learn about storage, how data has been stored in the cloud, yes, cloud computing offers a service called storage. So this is just a few category of what we have in the cloud. We have thousands, or let me say hundreds of services in the cloud right now. Okay, there are so many that even me who have been in cloud computing for a while, I still don't know some, to the extent like there are really so many services that you can get in the cloud. Okay, so now what this statement means is the delivery of these services, okay, over the internet, meaning that for you to reach these services, or for you to utilize any of these services that I have just mentioned, you need to be connected over the internet. Either you could use a public internet connection, or you could use a private internet connection like VPN and all of that. As long as you are connected, there is a connection. Yes, that is one of the concepts of cloud computing. Then number two, enabling faster innovation. So what this means is that with cloud computing, you can think outside the box. The quality of time you spend with the traditional way of doing things, procurement, setting things up, and purchasing other things that would make cloud computing, that will make your data center run in the way it should. Instead of you focusing on all of that, you could channel that quality time into thinking outside the box, innovating with your applications, how your applications are going to get hosted, and so on and so forth. Okay, don't worry about your head if it's sounding, for those who are not in IT at all, if this is still sounding a little bit high tech, we'll break it down gradually. Okay, and the last of all is what we call economies of scale. Economies of scale, what it means is that in the cloud, the resources are shareable. Okay, meaning that myself, Madam Titi, and some of you, we can share a particular cloud resource and we can share it properly. And because we are able to share this cloud resource, what happens? It makes the cost of this cloud resource even more affordable. For example, purchasing stuff from a bigger supermarket and purchasing that same item from a smaller supermarket could differ in price. When you purchase, for example, let's use a mug from a small store, you could purchase that mug for like 5,000 naira, depending on the quality of the mug. That same mug in a bigger store could cost less, could cost like 3,000 naira. And why is that so? Because of economies of scale. So the bigger supermarket, they actually rely on, high demand. A lot of people are demanding for it, and because they're demanding for it, we have a lot of supply. Okay? So when the supply is more, the cost becomes what? The cost becomes even more affordable. Unlike the smaller stores that could only have in small quantities or procure in small quantities, when the supply is small, then the cost becomes what? High. So the same principle applies in cloud computing when you hear the word economies of scale, because we are able to share a common resource at different times or even concurrently, it reduces the cost, unlike your traditional computing. Now, before we proceed any further, I'd like to tell you a story. I once worked in a park. I live in Port Harcourt, by the way, for as many that are in Port Harcourt, I'm with you here. I once worked in one of the biggest parks, so you should know the park. And we needed a server to handle, customer requests. Whenever people come in, they actually do what? They actually purchase tickets, and all of that. So we needed a server to manage that process. For those who do not understand what a server is a computing machine. That's a computer that handles requests. Okay, so it handles requests and it provides resources. So when you send a request to a server, for example, you want to purchase a ticket and you click on that order button, that is a request you are sending to the server, and the server returning the ticketing price and every other thing that you would require, that is the server responding by providing what? Resources. Okay, so a server is any computer system at all that actually does any of this, and so on and so forth. Now, we needed a physical server to handle tickets whenever people come into the park and, to purchase these tickets and all of that. Let me tell you what my boss did. We weren't so cloud computing savvy then. We were into the traditional way of doing things. So what did my boss do? He traveled all the way to Lagos. He spent some days in Lagos looking for a very good vendor. He went to Computer Village. For as many of us that live in Lagos, I've lived in Lagos before, and it's not easy. The hustle and bustle is something else. For as many of us that have an idea of what a computer village or the computer village in Lagos is, you know how strenuous it can be. So he went about looking for a vendor, finally got a vendor, and what he did was that he purchased this server. As soon as he purchased the server, he started traveling back to Port Harcourt. And as soon as he got to Port Harcourt, what did we do? We're just two, myself and himself, handling the entire IT space in the park. So we started assembling this server. It was not a funny experience. And I'm not talking about a server, like a very huge server. I mean, just a small box of server, just a small box, okay? So we started assembling it, and it took us like 2 to 3 days to properly put it in the cage, properly wire it, and ensure that it is up and functional. Okay, so it has taken like 2 to 3 days already. Now, if we should add the amount of time that my boss actually traveled to Lagos to do this procurement, it took him about a week. So let's say we have spent 10 days, okay, a week and 3 days just to set this all up. And that wasn't all. Because it's a server and it's handling requests at real time and all of that, we needed to ensure that it was connected to the internet 247. So what does that imply? It means money, right? To always have internet connection 247. Another thing we needed was we needed it to be in a cool environment. So we needed a cooling system or make it properly aerated. So that would cost money, right? So that's just it. Another thing we needed a technician. Just in case something happens to the server, we needed a technician to come check it out and see. And they also needed my service and the services of my boss to always be on ground because of that server. Because if anything happens to the server, if the server goes down, at some point, the entire park will be down because they cannot, make orders for requests for tickets, sorry, for people to be able to get into the park. So if you notice what I've said, number one, we have wasted quality time. We spent over 10 days trying to just put in a very, very small server. Okay. And number two, we have spent money from the transportation. My boss had to travel all the way from Lagos. He had to pay his hotel bills. He had to travel back to Port Harcourt and pay even more because of the cargo. We haven't even talked about the money for the internet 247, whether we are in the park or not. Then the cooling system, okay? And every other thing, the services that the technician will be rendering, that's also cost. So if we should add all of these together, we'll be overwhelmed, and we cannot even have enough time to innovate. We cannot even have enough time to think about other things that could matter, right? We could not even have the time to think about, oh, okay, let's see how we can modify this application. Let's even see how we can do this and do that and do all of that. We didn't have the time to do that. Why? We were overwhelmed, we were swamped, we were just focusing on the other things, the operational cost as well as capital cost. We're concentrating on those. So because we're concentrating on that, we lacked what we call faster innovation. Okay. Now, the next one, flexible resources. Okay. We lacked the ability to modify our servers. If you know what happens to a park or any recreational center, whenever, let me use Jumia as an example. We all know Jumia, jumia.com, the e-commerce site. Whenever it's Black Friday, like it's time for Black Friday, what happens? The request, customers' orders become, in fact, more than twice the original size. So if Jumia on a regular day receives, let's say, 100 requests from people all over the world ordering for shoes, school bags, and etc. On Black Friday, you will have people ordering for electronics. You have people ordering for a whole lot, like phones, because they want to get it cheaper. So that could even, what is double? Like more. Let's multiply it. It's geometrical thing, right? It could, their request could move from 100 to 1,000. And once it happens that way, if Jumia was like us, then when we were using that small server that could handle just 100 requests, what will happen during Black Fridays or anytime people are rushing down to the park, maybe during Children's Day or October 1st? The crowd is usually power packed. So what happens? It could crash the server because the amount of requests, the amount of orders coming into that server is bigger than the capacity that the server can actually receive and provide resources for. So the server will be down. Have you ever encountered when you go to jumia.com and all of a sudden you see this site cannot be reached? How will you feel? Some people will start cursing. Some people will start getting mad. Some people will start saying, these junior people, they don't even know anything. But you do not understand what's going on. But so far, so good. We have never experienced it, right? We have never experienced when we go to jumia.com and we don't see their site. We always see their site up and functional. Now, why is that so? It is because Jumia adopted the cloud. So instead of doing the traditional thing that my boss and I did over some years now, they are using cloud resources, which allows them to scale in and scale out at any point in time. The word scale in and scale out in the cloud means for that small server that we have during high peak periods like Black Friday in Jumia, the server has the ability to multiply itself. Additional servers can be added if it was a cloud environment. Okay, so when Jumia is facing like 10,000 requests coming in concurrently, their server has the ability to multiply itself across boards to handle the request. That is why no matter how or when you search for jumia.com, even if it is 12 midnight, you would see jumia.com. Why? They adopted the cloud, and within the cloud environment, your small server or your big server has the ability to multiply itself and has the ability to bring back itself to the normal size. So it is flexible. So when Jumia leaves the Black Friday season and goes back to its regular periods where they experience like 100 requests per day, the server has the ability to come back to the normal count. So if it was just one server that was handling that request before Black Friday, where it multiplied itself to 20 servers, okay, it can actually bring back itself to one server again. So just imagine if we were not in the cloud, what will happen? Probably before Black Friday, the IT people in Jumia would have run all the way to purchase 20 servers because they are expecting Black Friday. Is that not so? After the hassle of purchasing these 20 servers, coupling it, aerating it, and doing all of that traditional stuff, what happens when they go back to their regular periods? Back to 100 requests that only requires one server. It means that 19 servers will be what? Useless or underutilized. And we all know that in electronics or in the world of electronics, whenever an electronic is underutilized, what happens? It could get damaged. So which could lead to what? Waste of funds. So if Jumia must have purchased or procured those 20 servers for like 200 million naira, because servers are quite expensive, very expensive. If they must have purchased it for 200 million naira and maybe one just cost 20 million naira, what happens for them to wait for the next Black Friday, which will happen in November 2026? They might not be able to maintain the remaining 19 servers. And before you know, one fault here, another fault there, damages. They have wasted time, efforts, and funds. And people, you know how people are with money. It could be very annoying. But in the cloud, you cannot even imagine something like that happening. Why? Because the management of these resources are not within your custody. Okay, so now a pictorial example of what a cloud is after discussing all of this that I have just mentioned. A typical example is Microsoft purchased a building in a certain space, maybe somewhere in the US. Let's use Florida as an example. They purchased a very large amount of land, and they build big buildings. And inside that buildings, they put in compute resources, which is servers, storage, network, and all of that. They put all of these things inside that big building and they call it what? Their data center. Now, they are reaching out to you as an organization or as an individual and saying, come and use what we have already purchased. We have the manpower to monitor these devices. We have the manpower to purchase cooling system that will aerate these devices. We have the manpower to make these devices connected to the internet 24/7. All you just need to do, regardless of where you are in the world, for example, Nigeria, all you just need to do is to use our portal, use our websites, and access them over an internet connection. I'll show you what the portal looks like. So instead of you having all these computers in your own room, just the way my boss and I assembled it in our own little computer room, it has already been done for you. The work has already been done for you by Microsoft in their own building, on their own land, with their own resources, security, manpower, and all of that. All you just need to do is to reach and use these resources over an internet connection. It could be a private connection, or it could be the regular internet connection that we use. So if you have an imagination of what I have just said, I will be showing us some pictures as we go, as we proceed. If you have an imagination of what I just said, that is what the cloud is. So the cloud is not in the sky. It's not the cloud that you see on the sky. It's just somebody else's location that has been furnished with the computing resources that you might need in the future, or you might even need now. And they are telling you, connect to these resources. Everything is available for you. Connect to these resources using our website and do everything that you want. And once you are done, you are done. So in the cloud, you pay as you use. So once you purchase a virtual machine, for example, you are purchasing the virtual machine based on the usage. Okay, based on the usage. For example, if you purchase a virtual machine for $100 and you did not use that virtual machine till the next month, your money will still be there. Okay, your money will still be there. Microsoft can only charge you for maintenance fee, maybe maintaining the disk, even though you are not using it. They could charge you for that, only the disk. But every other thing they will not charge you, and you still meet your money. Your money could just depreciate like maybe $5 or $10, and you still have 90 something dollars remaining for you the next year, the next month, even the next year if you did not use it. Okay, so it is a pay as you use model. So without even talking too much about that, we'll still talk about that. Let's just go to the next slide. There are different kinds of cloud environment. The very first type of cloud is called private cloud. So this private cloud is a typical example of what I just mentioned. You know, the office my boss and I had for our small server. Okay, so some organizations, they call it computer room. Bigger organizations, they call it data centers. Okay, if you have a data center or a computer room in your organization, and when you open that room, you see servers inside, you see lights blinking because of internet routers, connections, and everything, that is what a private cloud. It is private to you because it's within your location. Now, there are benefits to using private cloud over a public cloud, and there are also disadvantages. So if you can read through here, it says organizations create cloud environment in their data center. So the organization creates the cloud environment. And what's the cloud environment? The compute resources, storage, network, and every other thing, servers, whatever it is that your organization might need. They put it in that computer room, and they do what? They are responsible for operating the services they provide. So this is the downside of having your own private cloud. Just like my boss and I then, we were responsible for everything, the cooling, the security, internet, everything, the charges that comes with procuring manpower to maintain it. We were responsible for it. Now, the beauty of it is that it does not provide access to users outside the organization. So now this is an advantage. There are some very classified information that some organizations do not want to be in a public space. They don't want it to be on another man's server. They don't want it to be on another man's storage. They want it to remain within their environment. Okay, so that's why they actually built their own computer room. They put in their own storages, they put in their own servers so they can manage it themselves, which is a bad thing, but they are protecting their resources themselves, which is a good thing, because now the resources are not outside there in the cloud. If it is serious problem. Maybe they did something in the past that is bad that requires suing. Putting it in the public environment can be very dangerous. For example, we have the US government and all of that, but we'll talk about then. We'll talk about that as we progress. So some organizations have classified informations, and because of that, they solely stay within their own data center, which is their own computer room. Okay, it's not easy to manage, but it's safe for them. Okay. The next type of cloud we have is what we call the public cloud. Now, the public cloud is what I just mentioned. It is the one that you have to access the computer and the storage over the internet. What I just mentioned. Okay, how you access computing resources over the internet. Now, public cloud is not within your domain. It can be within Microsoft's domain. It can be within AWS or Google. It can even be within your neighbor's domain. Maybe your neighbor is a cloud provider. You never can tell. Maybe his house, his duplex is filled up with racks of server storage, and he gave you a website. Okay, if you want to connect to any of this, connect it using our website, regardless of where you are. So that's a typical example of a public cloud. So Microsoft renders public cloud services. They also render private cloud services, but we are not going there yet. Let's talk about the public cloud services that they do, what they provide. So they can have a very big computer of, let's use as an example, a 120 gig RAM. Okay, I believe we all know what a RAM is. Most of us here are using computers. And this big computer has 120 gig RAM, has 3 terabytes of storage. The CPU capacity is like 10 gigahertz. I'm just saying as an illustration. And now, for you as an end user or as an organization to use that resource, it might be very expensive if only you use a 120 gig RAM system. What are you using it for? Except you're working on big data or something. So what will you do? Out of that big computer Microsoft has provided, yourself, your neighbor, every other person in your house, or any other person that requires a virtual computer can create a virtual computer from that big computer. So maybe you require a 16 gig RAM, you can create from that big computer. Your neighbor requires 32 gig RAM. He can also share that big computer by creating a machine on it. So this is exactly how it works. It's a shareable environment. We all can share a particular resource without even knowing, and it makes the cost what? Cost effective. So that's an example of what a public cloud. So if you see, it is owned by cloud services or hosting providers like Microsoft, AWS, Google. It provides resources and services to multiple organizations and users. It is accessed via secure network connection, typically over the internet or over a VPN. Last but not the least, in our slide is what? Hybrid cloud. So the hybrid cloud provides what? The hybrid cloud provides the two. That's why it's hybrid. It provides what? Private and public cloud services. Okay, so means that some organization, they want two flavors. They don't just want to take one option. So they have their own private data center, just like my boss and they also have the public one where they have to share resources with other people, like subscribing to Azure, Microsoft Azure, or AWS and all of that. Okay, so the benefit of this hybrid cloud is that it is the most flexible because you can determine where you want to store your files. You can determine where you want to host your applications. For example, you might want to host your application in Azure, which is a public cloud environment, and you want to store your files, your daily transactions within your own computer data center. Okay, so that is what we call a hybrid cloud. So far we have discussed what cloud computing is. We've also talked about the concepts of cloud computing. And we've talked about the different kinds of cloud environment. Example, the public cloud, the private cloud, and the hybrid cloud. So with all that I have just said, you can see the comparison over here. For public cloud, there is no capital expenditure to scale up. That's to add multiple resources, computing resource power. So instead of 4 gig RAM, you're using 16 gig RAM all of a sudden. You do not require expenditures to scale up because it is done by the cloud provider. Applications can be quickly provisioned and deprovisioned because it is hosted by who? The public provider. Organizations only pay only for what they use. Now, in comparison with the private cloud, hardware must be purchased for startup and maintenance. Organizations have complete control over resources and security. Organizations are responsible for hardware maintenance and updates. Then for the hybrid cloud, we have what? It is the most flexible. Like I mentioned, you can determine where you want to do anything. Organizations determine where to run their applications, and organizations control security, compliance, or legal requirements. So we are going to stop there today. We're going to stop there today. And if anyone, this is the time for you to ask any questions that you might have, okay? Because when you ask questions and you get the answers, you might never forget it because you asked, right? So the floor is over to you.
I would like to ask, what model will you say is the best for an organization? Is it the public, private, or both? Thank you.
Great. Thank you
Yeah.
so
Okay.
very much. Okay, ma. Thank you so
Go
very
ahead.
much
Go
for
ahead.
asking
I
that
wanted to know if you
question.
would take it.
Okay, okay. So it all depends on what your organization, number one, wants. What do they want to achieve and how much can they afford? So these two things determines what we want to achieve. Okay, so if your organization can afford, managing their own private data center because they don't want to put their information out there, then the private cloud is the best for them. Okay, if your organization feels the private cloud has a lot of hassle, it's going to take a lot of manpower and it's going to be very expensive for them, then they can focus on what? Public cloud. But then again, if your organization says we can afford the stress of handling and managing a private cloud, and we can also afford the public cloud together, then they can go ahead to procure it. Because for me, there is no right or wrong answer. It is all about what your organization intends to achieve and how much are they willing to spend. Do you get? Most of the time, the best of the form is having the hybrid cloud. That's the best. But can your organization afford it? That's the next question. What exactly do they even want to achieve? That's another question. So yes, that's what I would say.
Very funny one. So, are we going to build public cloud during this training or private or hybrid?
Yes, yeah, actually, actually, you can even choose to build hybrid, right? It's depending on your, let me see, it's funny, right? And it's also a funny answer. It's depending on your budget. Let me put it that way. If you have the budget to go to Tigba, set up a mini desktop, prepare it, make it look like your server, your local, set it up, install server operating system on it. You can even create a mini corner in your room if you have space in your house that represent a server room for you, and you put that device there, set it up, install a server, and we can then look at maybe integrating it with the public cloud. So that means you are going to be operating an hybrid cloud in the end. So it depends on your budget. Okay, thank you very much for that. Yes, Eddie.
Hi, just a quick one. Thanks for sharing this particular information. Is very important, especially to myself. So just a quick one. Will you also be able to share the hard copy or not the soft copy of this, apart from sharing on the YouTube channel.
Right? Are you talking about the
don't know.
slides?
Yeah, the slides.
We will get approval if it can be shared. Then if it can be shared, we'll share it with you.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Any other question? Okay, I still have people are still having their hands up. Lucy, you're raising your hand, but I guess you've dropped it or you've dropped off. Okay. Yes, Lucy, go ahead. Hope we can hear you now.
Models. So you take notes once you're being asked what are the various cloud deployment models in the cloud is what you call the public, private, and hybrid cloud. Okay. So the next slide where we are headed now is what we call CapEx and OpEx. I see this as a very, very interesting topic because it's not all about cloud computing alone. It's also in our day-to-day activities. Okay. So please try as much as you can to pay attention and you should know where this applies. And now I love this topic again because it tells us where capital expenditure belongs to in the cloud deployment model and where operational expenditure belongs to as well. So let's talk about CapEx and OpEx. So CapEx, it is the upfront spending of money on physical infrastructure. Costs from CapEx have a value that reduces over time. So let's break it down. Whatever you spend money.
Sorry, is there a slide?
Oh, you can see
The
my
slide
screen?
have not changed. Yes.
It
Oh,
has
really?
changed. I can see. I can see.
We can
I can
see
see.
it. We can see
Oh,
it.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Okay. Yeah,
We can see the
thank
slide.
you. Okay, like you can see CapEx and OpEx, to be sure.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can, Jennifer.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Alrighty. So, whatever you pay upfront for any physical infrastructure at all, it could be a building, it could be a car, it could be a machine, right? Maybe a factory machine. Maybe you want to produce pure water or bottled water, and you have to pay an upfront money for that. It is actually referred to what? Capital expenditure. And the funniest thing about capital expenditure is that over time, the value depreciates, except maybe there is an inflation in your economy at some particular time. For example, if you purchased a car for 10 million last year, this year, as long as it's not brand new, you should be willing to sell the car 7 million, as long as inflation did not affect your economy. But we know in Nigeria currently, if you had bought a car like 10 million last year, this year is like 15 million. Okay, so let's just rule out the exception. In a normal sense, all things being equal, capital expenditure procured always depreciates over time. It's a natural law. Okay. Anytime someone purchases something from you that has been used before, it becomes what? Second hand, as we normally call it. And anything second hand is also very affordable compared to when we just purchased it outrightly. So that's exactly what capital expenditure is. Now let's go to operational expenditure. It's when you spend on products and services as needed. What's an example of operational cost? Now, you have someone that runs a particular service. Maybe this person comes to your house and delivers pure water. Okay. And you have to pay for the person's what they call that thing, transport fare. You have to pay for the pure water that the person delivers to you. So you are only going to pay for what the person or the service that the person has rendered for that day. You are not going to purchase the entire pure water factory. So you are purchasing or covering the costs for what has been done for you at that particular time. Okay. An example of operational cost is like your DSTV. The month that you purchase subscription is the time that you have access to the DSTV. Okay? The days that you did not pay, DSTV will lock you off. Right. So now they get billed immediately. As soon as the pure water boy gets to your house, you handle what? The money to him. As soon as you want to watch maybe your favorite sports or African magic, you what? You pay, you subscribe for that month. So they get billed immediately for the amount of service within the amount of time. That is what you call, operational cost. So bringing it back to the cloud, I want to throw this as a question. I want you to think about it before you answer me, okay? So based on all of this I've said about capital expenditure and operational expenditure, where do you think public cloud falls under, and where do you think private cloud falls under? Anyone that would take his or her time to think about it can go ahead to answer me. Thank you.
Hello everyone.
Hello, you can introduce yourself as well.
Okay, my name is Comfort, and I would say capital expenditure falls under the private cloud, while the operational expenditures falls under the public cloud.
Comfort, are you sure? Did you really listen to me?
Yes.
Okay, I actually saw someone else's hand up. So Comfort, let me hear from the other person and then we can go ahead to judge. Yes, so just go next. If you raise your hand after Comfort, you can just unmute yourself and speak.
Okay, look, please, can you unmute yourself and speak? Oh,
All right.
Thank you,
Can
Ma.
you hear me?
yes, we
Yes, we
can hear
can
you.
hear you.
Okay. So I would say that private cloud falls under capital expenses, while public cloud falls under operational expenses.
Sorry, can you take that again?
I said private cloud falls under capital expenses, while public cloud falls under operational expenses.
This is serious. Okay, please, I want the last, like the third person, and that will be the last. Then we can judge if you guys are correct. I see you concord with what Comfort said, and I'm just wondering if it's
Susan, you
correct.
had your hand up. Where is Susan? Okay, Eddie, go ahead.
I think on my end, it's the other way around. Because when you talk about the private cloud, you have full control of the maintenance, the server, each and everything. So I think it falls under the operational expenditure because you get billed like immediately. You're paying for what you're using basically. Then on the public one, I think the value also reduces over time and also in terms of upfront spending of the money on physical infrastructure. So I think is more like it's open. It's not that like private one. That's my understanding though, but I stand to be corrected.
Yeah. Wow, that's good. Eddie, awesome. I love your perspective. I see where you're coming from, and that's a very beautiful perspective. So let's now, take it from the very top, which is Comfort and Luke, I believe, and then Eddie. So based on everything we've discussed about public cloud and private cloud, uh, Comfort and Luke are actually correct. Eddie is not totally wrong. I understand where he's coming from and I would explain so that Eddie would understand why Comfort and Luke is actually correct. Eddie, thank you once again for bringing in that perspective, about capital expenditure and operational expenditure. So the reason why Luke and Comfort, why there seems to, tally, because number one, when it comes to capital expenditure, you are the one purchasing the infrastructure. But I see where you are coming from. You're talking about like the cloud provider purchasing the infrastructure and it's going to reduce value from the cloud provider's end over time. But now we are not looking at the cloud provider. We're looking at you as a person, okay, or as an organization. So if it is you as an organization, you are the one purchasing this infrastructure. You're purchasing the building, you're purchasing the compute, you're purchasing the manpower, the air cooling system, internet, 247 electricity. You're purchasing all of these things. And guess what? It's all on you. So it becomes the weight of everything is on you because you get to manage all of these things yourself. You are purchasing them physically. You are not purchasing them from the cloud. Okay. So when you purchase these things yourself, they reduce in value. The computer, the servers that you purchased in 2003, and we are in 2025, it has reduced in value. In fact, as a matter of fact, you should be thinking of replacing those servers. Okay, so we are talking about you as a person. So capital expenditure falls under the traditional way of doing things, which is the private cloud. While operational expenditure has nothing to do with you, it has everything to do with the cloud provider. And since it has everything to do with the cloud provider, you are only paying as you use. So if you purchase if you purchase a virtual machine from a cloud provider's physical machine, they are only giving you access as long as you use. So that's how much you're paying for. It is like the boy that is bringing pure water to your house, and you are only paying him for the amount of pure water that he has brought in for that particular time, and you're only paying him for his transport fare for that day. You're not paying him for like forever. It's just for that particular time. So that's why we liken operational expenditure for cloud services and capital expenditure for what? Private or traditional cloud. Do we all understand?
Yes,
Understand.
please.
Awesome.
Yes.
I want to see more ladies talk. Oh. I want to see more. In fact, I want to hear the ladies' voice more than the guys because this program, what I heard, it was intentionally for ladies, and then some guys came in, and then it's for every gender that supports us, right? So I want to see so many ladies talk one way or the other. I don't just want to see the guys. It should be more of the ladies. Alrighty. So that leads us to the next thing, which is consumption-based model. So this is exactly what we are talking about. Pay as you use. Cloud service providers operate on a consumption-based model, which means that end users only pay for the resources that they use. Now, the beautiful thing about this consumption-based model, number one, better cost prediction. Number two, prices for individual resources and services are provided. And number three, billing is based on actual usage. So let's take it from the top. Better cost prediction. In fact, let's start from the middle, which says prices for individual resources and services are provided. If you go to a supermarket and you can see the cost of Milo, you can see the cost of milk, you can see the cost of custard. The next time you will be going back to the market, let's imagine that the market is not volatile. It maintains the same cost. The next time you'll be going back to the market, you already know the cost of these things. And so you can plan ahead of you can plan ahead regarding how many Milo you would want to buy, the quantity of milk you want to purchase, the quantity of custard you want to purchase for the month. Why? Because the time you went to purchase it, you could see the prices there. So the same thing applies to the cloud. In Azure, we have what we call Azure Price Calculator. So if you get to this site, don't worry, as we progress, we'll definitely see this site. Once you get to the site, you will definitely see the cost of these resources and services in Azure. So when you see the cost of a certain spec of virtual machine, and maybe you want to use 3 of it, you can do what? You can predict how much your organization will be spending per month, even for a whole year. So that's why it says better cost prediction, because now the individual cost of price of resources and services are what provided. Then the third one says billing is based on actual usage, and that's what we've been talking about from the get-go. Whatever you use is exactly what you pay for. Okay. Although in some cases, Microsoft will charge you maintenance fee, even though you are not using that resources. So the maintenance fee is not going to be as much as when you are using the resources, okay? For example, if you purchase a virtual machine, the data disk, that's like your C drive in your physical computer, even though the virtual machine is not turned on, Microsoft will still charge you. but we'll charge you just a little bit, just a little bit. Okay, so billing is based on actual usage. So let's quickly look at cloud benefits. Number one, high availability. Remember the analogy of Jumia when I mentioned that whenever Jumia has, for example, the Black Friday period, the amount of requests, the amount of orders that the server receives must have quadrupled or geometrically multiplied, right? So if they were receiving 100 requests or 100 orders in a regular day, during Black Friday, they should get ready to receive how many? 1 million or hundreds of thousands of orders. So for them to be able to receive those requests, there is what you call scaling in and scaling out in cloud computing. They should be able to what? Scale in and scale out, and scale up and scale down. So scale in and scale out. Let's start from scale out. Scale out is the process of adding either identical virtual machines or a higher capacity virtual machine to the already existing virtual machine. So if Jumia had one virtual machine server of 8 gig RAM, they can decide to scale out by having 3 virtual machines of 8 gig RAMs that will receive the request for that day. Okay, they can even decide to say, okay, I don't want to have 3 extra virtual machines of 8 gig RAM. I want it to be higher. Maybe some will be 8 gig, some will be 16 gig. I want it to be flexible, right? Within a particular size. So they can decide to do what? Do all of that. And when they do that, it makes what you call their application highly available. There are so many ways to achieve high availability in the cloud. And when you hear that term, high availability, it means that your resources, your website, your application should always be available 24/7. And one of the ways to achieve that in the cloud is what I just mentioned. Scale in and scale out. Scale out adds more virtual machines to what you have. Scale in reduces the size, either back to the normal size or back to the number of size that you want to reduce it to. Now, scale up actually means you are adding more compute power. So instead, maybe you started with a virtual machine of 32 gig RAM, and because of what your application, the kind of resources your application is actually using, you can scale up that virtual machine to a 64 gig RAM. So you are not adding more virtual machines to that virtual machine. You are actually improving on the compute power. So scaling down, on the other hand, actually means you are reducing the compute power. Maybe you realize that your application does not really require 32 gig RAM at some point. You can actually do what? Scale down by resizing that virtual machine to what? 16 gig RAM. Now that's another way of achieving what? High availability. There are other ways like having availability zones, but I do not want to talk about it now because we'll still talk about it as we progress so that it doesn't confuse us. Okay, there's what you call availability zone. There's what you call availability set. There's what you call skill sets. Skill set is definitely what I just talked about, scaling in and out. That is what skill set does in the cloud. But the other parts like availability zone, availability set, and other things that we'll be talking about in order to improve high availability in the cloud, we will definitely see them as we progress. Okay. Then the next thing is what? Scalability, which is exactly what I have just said. In the cloud, you can scale to achieve high availability. So that's exactly what that scalability means. You can go up and down, you can add, you can reduce to your resources. Okay. Then number 3, elasticity. I love talking about elasticity because it has confused a lot of people most of the time. And I like taking my time to explain it, because when you hear the word scalability and you hear the word elasticity, kind of, sound alike. Scalable is elastic, but what exactly is the difference? Now, for elasticity, it is the process of scalability. Now, remember, scalability is either you are what? You are scaling in and out. So the process of you scaling in and scaling out is what you call elasticity. If you take a rubber band and you drag that rubber band, it has an elastic limit, right? You can now shrink the rubber band to its normal size if you want. So that process of going up and down is what you call elasticity. The process of scalability is what you call elasticity. Okay? Now, with all of this I have just said, it brings us to the fourth point, which is reliability. It means that the cloud is reliable. The cloud is reliable. The cloud can offer you high availability by scaling your resources at will. The cloud will give you an SLA saying that if you have a virtual machine with us, be sure that this virtual machine will be available to you at 99.9 times. If you add an availability set to it, it could give you 99.95 times. If you now spread it across availability zone, it will give you 99.99 times. So the cloud is reliable. Okay? It has other things that we'll be talking about as we progress that makes it reliable. Then number 5, I guess. Yes, number 5, predictability. Predictability is what we just talked about. Because the cost of resources and services are made available to everyone, you can predict. And predictability gives you the ability to better manage your resources, your cloud virtual infrastructure. Because you can predict, you can do what? You can better manage what you have. So you will not be clumsy when your boss is asking you for something or asking you what are the resources we have, how much. There's what you call FinOps or FinOps, people that are in the financial world as part of us here. It's also applicable in the cloud. We call it, some people pronounce it as FinOps or FinOps, which means financial operations or financial operations. It's because of predictability. The cost of your resources is provided for you even while you are using it. Let's just imagine you didn't even check. Let's say you were testing the resource, you didn't even check through the Azure price calculator, you were just testing the resource. You can actually go and check cost optimization and you would see how much that resource has cost you, or the resources have cost you over time. So that's one of the beautiful things about the cloud. They are not hiding anything from you. Some people do it. They will hide the cost from you so that they can bill Mr. A, who is richer, more, and bill another person who is not as rich less. So there are no hidden charges per se. Everything is actually transparent, which is predictability, and which eventually leads to what? Better infrastructure management. The next thing is what you call security, which is the sixth benefit of the cloud. And the cloud is secure. Now, why is the cloud secure? This thing actually confuses people. When they hear the cloud is secure, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a story. I once worked as a virtual machine support. Okay. And one day I had a ticket. And the ticket was about a man whose virtual machine, in fact, it was a server. Okay. It was a virtual machine, but a server. His virtual machine had been hijacked by a ransomware threat actor. They encrypted everything. And guess what? It's a virtual machine, so it was on the cloud. To be more specific, it was on Azure cloud. So he quickly raised the ticket to Microsoft. Probably he must have read about cloud benefits and he saw security. So he quickly, raised the ticket. And he was like, oh, ransomware attack. They're asking him to pay Bitcoin. And even if he pays the Bitcoin, there's no assurance that they're going to release his important files and all of that. Huh. And I was just like, it was a very bad situation. It was a very bad situation because at that point, I was just laughing. I wasn't laughing like I was laughing at mocking the guy, but I was laughing because I was scared of the misconception this man must have, gotten when he heard, oh, the cloud is secure. Yes, the cloud actually offers you, when you purchase it, basic security. Okay. But as threat emerges over time, there is need for you to purchase more cloud security mechanisms that will help you secure your infrastructure. So when you hear that the cloud is secure, it means that the cloud actually provides you with various cloud security uh, services that could help you protect your infrastructure from threat actors, ransomware attack, malware attack, viruses, and all of that. But if you on your own just purchase the VM without purchasing the necessary security measures, or the security, without purchasing the necessary security services, or doing the carrying out some security measures to protect your infrastructure, you might just be like that man. So the end of the story is this: I had to deliver the bad message, or how am I going to put it? The bad message. Let me use that word. I had to deliver it, and it wasn't funny because everything is gone. Now, why is everything gone? He did not follow best practice in terms of securing his infrastructure. He was supposed to have a backup of that machine. Backup in the cloud, you have to pay extra cash. Okay. So he was supposed to have a backup so that in terms of ransomware attack, you can tell the threat actor, bye bye, you can take my VM, you can spin another VM with all your files and applications still intact. But he had no backup. He didn't have any Microsoft Defender. He didn't have any tool whatsoever to secure his device or his infrastructure. All he did was just to provision it. He didn't even follow the best practice in terms of NSGs and all of that. So the virtual machine was just opened to all sorts. So when you hear the word that the cloud is secure, it means that the cloud actually would provide you with best practice in securing your infrastructure, and actually they have what they call security services. You can purchase a firewall, you can do backup or replication. There are so many things you can connect it to your infrastructure to an XDR like Microsoft Defender. You can have a monitor, you can have an application gateway. There are so many things. You can have a DDoS service. There are so many things, but they will cost you. Most definitely. You know the word we say here, that better suit na money killer. So it will definitely cost you to protect your resource. But the beautiful thing is that the cloud makes all these services available to you. All you just need to do is to purchase them, or you follow through best practice. Of recent, I attended a Microsoft virtual tour, and I was speaking to some of my students of how the threats have actually emerged, of how the threats have actually moved from what it is. If I should tell you the amount of threats, we are talking about 73 trillion plus per day. 73. Do you know what that means? Every day, over 73 million attacks. Trillion, sorry. Trillion, not million, not billion. Trillion. So it means that if you are careless in the cloud, this security does not affect you. It's not for you. Threat actors will hijack your infrastructure. They will ask you to pay Bitcoin, and if you don't have that Bitcoin to pay, bye bye. And if you're protecting maybe your organization's infrastructure, bye bye to your job, because they will sack you. So please, let's understand, when you hear the word security in the cloud, you need to partake. There are some things that you need to do to keep your infrastructure secure, because the cloud actually makes it available for you. Okay. The next one is what you call governance. In the cloud, we have governance, and governance has to do with permissions, has to do with RBAC, has to do with blueprints. There are so many things about governance in the cloud that you might not understand now, but as we progress, you definitely understand. But the simplest form of governance is what you call permissions. We have what you call rollback access control, meaning that in the cloud, you can actually use based on the permissions that you have been granted. Not everybody will be an infrastructure owner. Some people can be a contributor. Some people can only read the resources without doing anything. Okay, so there is governance in the cloud. That helps you also secure your infrastructure. If you do not have governance in the cloud, anybody can come in to your environment, destroy, delete, do whatever they want. And you know what that means? It's very disastrous. So that's why we have governance in the cloud. And the last but not the least, which is manageability. Of course, with the cloud, you can manage your resources. You can organize your resources from management groups to subscriptions to resource groups. Okay, so it is manageable. The cloud gives you everything that you need to manage your resources. Okay, so we have bypassed our time, which is supposed to be probably 11:45, and now this is 11:47. Just to give room for contributions and questions, I will be stopping here. Let me just see. Okay, yes, I will be stopping here. So time for questions, Madam Titi, if there's any
Thank
contribution.
you once again. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
I'll just give them room. Anyone that have questions, I'll give them room to ask questions. So please, do you have any question with regards to this second part of the class for today? Yes, Tony Tunde, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for this segment. You really break it down in a nice way that it, at least for me, it's a lovely takeaway. So my questions goes this: can we?
Now, so for this, one thing you need to do before you sign up for a trial is you must have a Microsoft account.
Yeah,
When
I
we
do
say
have
Microsoft
Microsoft account.
account, it
Yeah,
can be
yeah.
outlook.com account, can be hotmail.com. If they are still giving hotmail, it can be live.com account. So currently you have one, but let me confirm. Can you go to the search and search for subscription? I want to be sure you have a subscription here. Go to the search box and search for subscription. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so you do not have any right now.
No, I haven't. I just, like I said yesterday, curiosity. I tried to read on my own, and I know I would need the lab, so I just start doing it.
Okay, okay, great. So now let's go back to home. Press the home, click the home button. So yeah. Okay, so we can try then. So let's click the so for everybody, if you have a dollar card, the first thing you need to do is to is to have a Microsoft account. Once you have a Microsoft account, you log into that account on a browser, and then once you log in, you can actually visit this URL to create a trial account for yourself. So if you have access to a dollar card and you want to do that, here is a link for you to click and follow through. I've dropped it in the chat. So now, can we click the start against the first option that says start with Azure trial? Okay, and then you can scroll a bit down and then you click the button. No, it's too much. Okay. Yes, go ahead. Let's see. Maybe, okay, there's another one option down. Yes, on that. Okay, so before you go, just scroll up a bit, just a bit on the same point, but scroll up a bit. Okay, yes, that's one. Now, from what you can see under you have two options here. One is pay as you go. It means once you put your card in it, that means after the 30 days, you continue to use and it will now start deducting from your salary. I'm sorry, from your card, I mean. So for the trial one, for the free Azure trial, it is available only to new customer, right? And then free monthly, you have free monthly amount of 20 plus popular services for 12 months. So there are some services that are free. For instance, for some, if you want to create app services for developers, there are some app services that are free. They are free. You don't need to pay for it. There's small configuration that is there. So there are some other services also that you can use freely that they won't charge you for a period of 12 months. Then for free, you have also free monthly amount of 65 plus always free services. So there are some services that are always free, like every month, and you have access to full catalog of services up to free amount and the one that can take up to $200 credit. So yes, Tony, can you scroll down a bit now?
Can I go down
Okay.
more?
Yes. Then he said, from what he said it's okay. One of the points he said is no upfront payment and that you can cancel at any time. You can cancel at any time. I will get that cancellation step ready for us and share on the WhatsApp. Then I will also get at what point can you cancel so that you can cancel it before you start deducting from the person's account card that you borrow, or even if it's from your own, right? Then if you look under, you see during the sign up verification process, there may be a temporary $1 authorization placed on your card, which will be reversed upon verification. They said they will remove $1, but they are going to return it for you after they verify that you are human, one, and that you have a card, just in case you overuse beyond $200, you have money in your card. That's why they're going to do that. But I'm hoping they will return it truly. Yes. Okay, so now can we now click the try Azure for free button? All right, so because you already signed in, it's just going to ask you to sign in again with your Outlook account. Remember, you need to use your Outlook account or your Microsoft account to be specific. And this is the next page after that, which is for you to agree. So you can select the first one. That's okay, I represent that I am individual, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to select the all, but it's okay if you are fine receiving plenty information. So we are going to click next here. Just click next. It's now going to take you to your card. Okay. So identity verification by card. Right. This is where you put your card. So I guess you have your card there. Okay.